Most people don't realize how seriously their brain takes rejection. We talk about it casually. They ignored me, she said no. Osh, I didn't get invited. But somewhere underneath all that language, something much older wakes up. Something primitive. It feels physical. You know that strange heaviness in your chest after being dismissed? That quiet replay loop later at night when you're brushing your teeth or staring at the ceiling? Your brain isn't being dramatic. It genuinely reads social rejection as danger, not metaphorical danger, real danger. The kind that once meant you might not survive winter because the tribe decided you didn't belong anymore. So when someone says no, or worse, doesn't respond at all, you shrink a little, almost automatically. You promise yourself you won't try that again. You tell yourself you're just being realistic, protecting your peace, learning your lesson. But if we're honest, most of the time we're just avoiding pain. And avoidance feels safe in the moment. It really does. You step back, lower expectations, stop asking, stop risking embarrassment. Relief comes quickly. The nervous system relaxes. Case closed. Except nothing actually improves. The world quietly becomes smaller. You speak less freely. You hesitate before reaching out. Opportunities start looking suspicious instead of exciting. You begin managing your life around minimizing discomfort rather than maximizing experience. And it happens so gradually you barely notice. One small retreat at a time. I used to think confidence meant becoming someone people couldn't reject. Someone impressive enough, interesting enough, smooth enough that no simply stopped happening. That if I improved myself enough, said the right things, looked the right way, timed conversations perfectly, I could outrun rejection entirely. Turns out, that's exhausting. And impossible. Because confidence doesn't come from eliminating rejection. It comes from surviving it so many times that your brain finally stops sounding the alarm. There's a strange shift that happens when you stop chasing approval and start experimenting instead. I don't mean becoming careless or provocative just for attention. I mean quietly changing the goal. Imagine walking into situations not hoping for acceptance, but being curious about rejection, almost welcoming it. Not because you enjoy discomfort, nobody does, but because you want evidence. Proof that a no doesn't actually destroy you. At first, it feels ridiculous, asking questions you assume will be declined, making suggestions that might fall flat, saying what you actually think instead of the safer version edited for approval. Your body protests immediately, heart rate up, slight tension in your shoulders. That familiar internal voice whispering, "Why are we doing this? This is unnecessary." And then someone says no, and nothing happens. You're still standing there, still breathing. The world keeps moving. Nobody banishes you from society. The floor doesn't open beneath your feet. Sometimes the other person forgets the interaction within minutes, which is both humbling and oddly comforting. That's when something subtle begins to change. You realize rejection hurts mostly because of the story attached to it, not the event itself. The meaning, the assumption that a stranger's response defines your value. When you deliberately face rejection again and again, the story weakens. Your nervous system learns through repetition what logic alone could never convince it of. Discomfort is survivable. It's exposure therapy, just without the clinical setting. You're teaching your brain through lived experience instead of motivational slogans. And slowly, almost annoyingly slowly, the fear loses its teeth. You stop negotiating your personality for approval. Conversations feel lighter because you're not secretly trying to extract validation from every interaction. You're just there, present, curious, willing. Ironically, people respond differently to that. When you're no longer desperate for a yes, you stop giving off that subtle tension everyone senses but nobody names. Neediness fades. You listen better. You laugh more easily. You walk away without resentment because the outcome was never your identity to begin with. There's a kind of calm indifference that emerges. Not coldness, not arrogance, just freedom. High confidence people often look relaxed, not because life favors them, but because rejection no longer negotiates their self-worth. They've already made peace with the worst-case scenario. I remember realizing one day that I'd stopped asking, why didn't they like me? Instead, I caught myself thinking, that was uncomfortable, and I handled it okay. That felt new, almost surprising. The focus shifts inward. Courage becomes more interesting than results. You start respecting yourself for showing up rather than winning approval. And oddly enough, that self-respect sticks longer than praise ever did. Because praise depends on others repeating it. Courage doesn't. After a major rejection, romantic, professional, social, the instinct is always withdrawal, hide a little, recover privately. Rebuild confidence before re-entering the world. But rebuilding confidence rarely happens in isolation. It happens in motion, in small risks taken while still slightly bruised, in awkward conversations, in invitations sent despite uncertainty. Each minor rejection recalibrates your ego, not destroying it, just resizing it to something more durable. You begin understanding that confidence isn't loud certainty, it's quiet resilience. The knowledge that even if things go badly, you'll adapt, recover, continue. There's something deeply liberating about walking into a room knowing you don't need universal approval to belong there. You speak more honestly, you disagree when necessary. You try things without rehearsing every outcome. The discomfort doesn't disappear, but it stops controlling you. And here's the strange paradox nobody mentions enough. Once rejection stops being terrifying, acceptance becomes easier to receive too. You're not clinging to it anymore. A yes feels nice, but it's no longer oxygen. You're breathing on your own. Over time, rejection becomes almost ordinary. Background noise, like wind brushing past your jacket. Noticeable maybe, but hardly defining. You stand a little taller without trying to. Conversations feel less performative. People sense steadiness, not perfection, just presence. And that weight people respect? It doesn't come from winning social interactions. It comes from surviving the failed ones without collapsing. You earn it quietly. Interaction by interaction, moment by moment. Confidence, it turns out, isn't something granted at birth or unlocked through achievement. It's accumulated evidence, proof collected over time that you can face discomfort and remain intact. Every rejection you live through adds another small piece of that evidence. Eventually, failure stops looking like a threat and starts looking like participation. You're no longer sitting safely in the audience analyzing outcomes. You're actually in the play, saying lines imperfectly, sometimes forgetting them, sometimes stumbling, but living the experience instead of avoiding it. Critics will always exist. Opinions too. None of that really changes. What changes is your relationship to them. You stop running. You start collecting moments, awkward ones, brave ones, uncertain ones, and somewhere along the way you notice something unexpected. The fear that once shaped your decisions has grown quieter. And the yeses? They tend to show up eventually. Not because you chased them harder, but because you finally stopped needing them to prove you were okay all along.